Thanks a lot for joining us today for our launch event. There's just a handful of big tech companies who control all our data. This is a problem with corporate surveillance, which is threatening our privacy. Democracy and autonomy of countries is also at risk. And this locks in businesses, home users, increases just the costs, and adds risk for all of us. Our goal and mission at Nextcloud is still the same. We want to put you in control over your data. What is needed are several things. First of all, privacy. Just imagine you want to share your photos with your friends and family, but you should be the only person who has access to it, no one else. This is a fundamental human right. The next thing that's needed is transparency and trust. We want to know who makes the software, who controls it, why and how, who can study it, who can change it, who can improve it. These are, of course, also the fundamental principles of open source, which are super important for us here at Nextcloud. Then ownership is the next question. Who actually owns the devices? Who owns the software? Who decides where it runs? Safety and security is the next challenge. And this is only possible with open source. And this is also only possible with a worldwide international community working together at Nextcloud. But now let's talk about Nextcloud, the solution. This is a privacy-first collaboration platform with a complete digital workspace, everything you need to do to work together over the internet with other people. Everything is under your control, and we stick to our key principles, like the data stays with you and organizations that create it. Nextcloud is deployed all over the world, used by tens of millions of individuals and organizations. In 2025 alone, we rolled out several 100,000, sometimes millions of new digital workspaces each month. 4 things make Nextcloud Hub special. First, you own it. You decide where it's running and who has control over it. Second, it is secure. You can really make sure that you're the only person who controls the data. Third, it's powerful and flexible. And fourth, it's easy to use. With this release, we made improvements in each of those areas. But let me hand over to the team to show you all about it.
Thank you, Frank, and greetings to Brussels. So, in many setups, work is spread across different tools. Files in one place, communication in another, and projects somewhere else. An integrated solution brings these pieces together, reducing friction, duplicate work, and need to constantly relearn how things work. As Nextcloud has grown, one question has stayed constant: how to add new capabilities without turning the platform into a collection of loosely connected tools. We have now Simon here, our software developer, to explain a little bit more about it. Simon, can you give us a little overview about how we approach design at Nextcloud and what is your team doing recently?
Yes, of course. So first of all, design in Nextcloud is not primarily about visuals. It is about integration and creating the best possible user experience. We follow our design principles in all our apps and provide them as guidelines for developers of third-party apps and integrations. Sharing a file should not require a user manual. For example, creating a folder for your team should be just a few clicks. In Nextcloud Hub 26 Winter, we do more improvements to make everything feel intuitive.
Well, software should be usable everywhere and by everyone. It should be accessible from any location, browser or operating system. How can we ensure this, and what did the design team recently worked on?
We constantly study how people use Nextcloud on different devices, and based on that, we improve the experience. For example, in Nextcloud Files app, we've adjusted the toolbar design for various screen formats and worked on the filtering UI. In general, your daily workflows are more simplified. For example, you can now find the QR code needed to log in on your mobile devices much more easily. Just click the little QR code icon in the user menu.
Our next principle is software should get out of the way, so it should do things automatically instead of offering configuration options. Can you give us an example?
Sure thing. Nextcloud Mail is an example of an app that works in a simple way but can do a lot. You can enjoy a simple, intuitive inbox with summaries and reply suggestions, or, if you wish, apply complex filtering in order to search your emails or set up bulk automations with quick actions. In Nextcloud Hub 26 Winter, it's even easier. All attachments are now clearly visible in email threads. Also, there's a compact mode and improved filtering, just to name a few improvements.
So to stick a bit with the design principles, one more principle is to always try and fix the root problem, not just adding settings.
Yes, we added a lot of improvements in how existing features work. For example, mail folders got more intuitive icons and wording. And we also improved the interface of the Nextcloud Assistant, our AI assistant. Where things need customization, we provide settings on both admin and personal level to get the best Nextcloud experience. Those settings were updated in many places.
Thank you, Simon. That was very insightful. Also, a very good transition to what's coming next, because we would like to talk about performance. And for that, I would like to hand things over to Jos.
So, a few weeks ago, we shared in a blog post details on a significant rewrite of a database and file access architecture. The new architecture, ADA, is designed to help Nextcloud continue to scale. Now, ADA stands for Accelerated Direct Access, and we'll have a look at what that means next. But this is, of course, also a homage to Ada Lovelace, who is widely recognized as the first computer programmer. Now, let's have a look at why we did this rework. Now, Nextcloud is used in small all the way up to really large instances with tens of millions of users. And it has become, over the years, a deeply integrated platform with files, tasks, chat, presence, unified search, real-time collaboration, tons of other apps built by a wide community of contributors. Now, all of this is, of course, in demand, in response to the demand of this community. And a recent wave of six-figure deployments in, for example, the public sector really shows that Nextcloud is working at scale and delivering the features that organizations need. But I want to stress, while Nextcloud has become this extraordinary platform, I really can't get a halfway complete list of features on a single page to show to you. It's really unique in the industry how many capabilities Nextcloud has in pretty much any area, and this is just for files. And files is, of course, just one part of the wider platform, which is not built by a single company or a single individual. And we are just part of the Nextcloud community. There are really many organizations, public, private, who contribute, thousands of individuals, companies, partners, and together this ecosystem even goes beyond our own community, as many other companies and communities and products are part of it. As an open source project, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. So there are lots of other tools and libraries and applications that are integrated in Nextcloud and help it be the platform that it is. And all of this so that users can then use that to build their own private digital workplace. Now, we have a responsibility to ensure that this platform supports all of this. And the product has to be defined by its use. So opening a chat, you want to see documents that are shared, you want to see the tasks that are assigned, you want to see upcoming meetings, you want to be able to assign tasks from a chat message, etc. When you click a document, you want it to open, not go to a different application. Everything has to be in one place, in real time. And that means that for Nextcloud, its architectural challenge is managing this shared state and ensuring a tight cross-feature consistency, bringing it all in one place. So Nextcloud, therefore, is designed as what we call a modular monolith or a modulith. And that means things are really tightly integrated, but at the same time, it is modular. You can swap components, you can choose a different Photos app or a different Office suite, different chat applications, and so on. You have this flexibility. Now, if you run different applications, like a whole bundle of different apps, you are limited in this integration. If you would try to gain that same level of integration, the whole network would be overloaded from all these apps talking to each other. And that's what you avoid with having this integrated platform that Nextcloud offers. Now, the monolith architecture of Nextcloud keeps the modules logically separated, but allows for in-process communication and a central data model. And that is what allows it to scale and perform well, even in a tightly integrated way. So the ADA engine brings a number of different changes to our architecture. Now, you can find the details in my blog, and I urge you to read it, but to summarize it, there are about three main things that we changed. So first is reorganizing access to the core database and the identifiers in a way that split tables up and make more direct access possible. This also creates a base for more advanced sharding support in the future that allows you to split the databases even more between different nodes, even in different data centers if needed. Part of this is the introduction of Snowflake IDs, which are very unique identifiers. You can read more details in the blog about that. Now, the second thing we did was to replace the mount cache with an authoritative table. So what this means, the mount cache is where we store who has access to what and the access information. So this is also important for security. And the table used to gather data from different places. When you were navigating the folders, they would see like, oh, you have access to this file and you have these access permissions, etc. But doing it while you were navigating the folders, of course, reduces the responsiveness sometimes of Nextcloud, even if it is cached. So we now have created a table that is updated whenever you share. And this table will always have the information, and that's why it is iterative. And this shifts work from read, the moment you're navigating your Nextcloud, to when changes are made, which of course happens a lot less often. This also allows, as they call it, lean data access to the file system. So essentially only getting the exact information that is needed for an operation, like downloading a file or looking at the content of a folder or getting the metadata of a file. And yeah, these improvements really save time while accessing data, so creating, again, a more responsive system. Now, the third major change we did is to enable direct download of files and previews on systems that use S3. So if you're running S3 as a storage, the download of a file from a client can now completely bypass the application server and go directly to storage, which of course saves time and network and extra overhead there. Now, you can read all the details of all the changes we did in our blog. There's a lot more to say about it. It's a very big change and also a very long blog. And we'd love to hear feedback, of course, from all of you to hear what you think of the changes we did and how it, works for you in practice. These are the big changes the Ada engine did. But together with this change in the Ada engine, we made a few other changes that are also very relevant for this. And this is in the high-performance backends for files and the high-performance backend for Talk. So these are components written in respectively Rust and Go, and they reduce the server load by keeping connections to the clients. Now, as the Ada engine stands for Accelerated Direct Access, so this is also something that was applied to the high-performance backends. So right now, they are just sending notifications, but with the new release, they will also push information directly to the clients. So the clients will know, for example, what files has changed, and they don't need to sync with the server if no relevant files were changed for them. Or they will get chat messages or changes of people who join the chat room for Talk, pushing it directly to the clients without having to go via the server, which again reduces the load on the server by up to 80%. Now, another area of improvement was in our assistant. A range of local tasks like text and image generation or conversion between speech and text and context chat are now up to 10 times as fast as they used to be. Local translation is 8 times faster, and on mobile, the assistant is running the jobs also a lot faster in the background, so it'll get back to you quicker with an answer. There were, of course, changes made in many other areas for this release, so not just the Ada engine and the changes to the assistant. We have previews and photos that are now about 40 to 60% faster. Fetching sharing data in Talk is 20% faster. And by removing some legacy libraries, the UI JavaScript is about 10% smaller. Now, I want to give a bit of a showcase of the impact of all these changes. And Magenta Cloud here from Deutsche Telekom is a really good example. So we have been collaborating closely with them over the years, as well as with others in our community, of course. And for example, for Hub 9, we optimized the database clustering by creating a read-write split possibility for the database. And for Magenta Cloud, the heaviest loaded node in the database cluster had its load reduced by 20 to 30% by these improvements. So that was really helpful. Now, we've been making more improvements over the last months, and all these add up to 6 times faster response times to a whole range of very common operations. For example, downloading a 10 megabyte file went on average from 2.5 seconds to 0.4. So that's really a nice improvement in performance on their systems. So Deutsche Telekom is also employing a team of engineers that directly contributes to Nextcloud. So they work together in the Nextcloud community, building improvements to various apps and tools that they need for their users. And of course, these benefit everyone. Over the coming weeks, you will see some changes in the iOS and Android apps, for example, in the photo view, that were contributed by Magenta Cloud. And we have many other customers and partners that contribute to Nextcloud in such a way. And this is really the benefit of having this large community, of course, and really helps you as a user get better software and better solutions faster. Now, of course, from Deutsche Telekom's point of view, this also makes a lot of sense. It's a real win working with our community because they are offering a sovereign digital workplace offering to large organizations. And so if you work with them, you will benefit again from all these collaborations in our community, all the improvements that Deutsche Telekom and others work on together with us. So you benefit from the deep knowledge that they have as a customer, and you benefit from the relation with others in the community, including, of course, Nextcloud, in terms of the product you get and the performance, scalability, and all the features, of course. Now, all the changes that came with this release, developed with Deutsche Telekom, developed with many other customers and partners, as well as the ADA engine that we built with the changes to the high-performance backend and others. All these changes have a lot of impact. At the same time, this impact is going to grow over time while we build further on the ADA engine and add more capabilities to it, shifting more operations to this direct database access and the direct file access. We did gather for this release already a few performance numbers. I've put them here on the slide so you have a bit of an idea of the impact. And as I said, you should read the blog if you are interested in the technical details of the rewrite and want to learn more about it. But for now, I want to hand over to Grete and Derek to walk us through the next series of updates.
Thanks, Jos. Now, let's take a look at security. Security in Nextcloud is part of the platform architecture and influences many design and implementation decisions. Nextcloud is used in environments with strict security and compliance requirements, which shapes how features are built, how data is handled, and how permissions are enforced. For most institutions, like in the public sector, the workload is high, time is limited, but strict data protection requirements must be met at all times. In this environment, security cannot depend on constant vigilance or hand curation. It has to be built into the system, guaranteeing all employees meet these requirements in confidential data handling without adding extra layers of work or demanded knowledge. This is exactly how security is designed in Nextcloud. It starts already in the administration page.
Yes, exactly. Nextcloud checks your setup and gives you warnings. If your screen looks like this, you have some work to do. In the new release, we added a warning when two-factor authentication is not enabled, as this can make a big difference in security.
We added two-factor authentication to the quick presets for admins, so that if you run a private server for your family or a Nextcloud at a small company, you are less likely to forget to enable two-factor authentication.
If you have any kind of important data on the server, I really suggest you to go to the admin settings and enforce it for all users.
Nextcloud has many other security measures and settings. Here is a list of some of them. Users and their choices play a key role in security. Access control is consistent across all apps. Permissions defined in files apply equally to sharing, communication, and collaboration features, reducing the risk of unintended data exposure.
Right, data floating around multiple platforms adds risks. Keeping it within Nextcloud means a single set of rules applies.
Nextcloud offers security classification labels for additional protection to data beyond the user-level sharing permissions. The data loss protection feature automatically applies labels based on document properties or embedded metadata. DLP can be used to restrict access to unauthorized users, as well as support various automations with Nextcloud Flow. With this release, changes in the content and metadata of files are real-time reflected in addition or removal of labels. That way, security definitions are kept up to date. For example, if you have a document with private information like an address, it would get tagged with private. Now, if you remove the address and save the document, the tag gets removed. Organizations can integrate Nextcloud into their existing security concepts, including network segmentation, identity management, and monitoring, instead of adapting those concepts to the platform. For administrators, security remains observable and manageable, even if installations grow. For users, security works largely in the background without adding unnecessary complexity to the daily work. And there we have it, Nextcloud security in a nutshell.
Oh, I see end-to-end encryption. You did not mention that.
Consider that a sneak peek into the file section updates.
Of course, we always do a lot more than work on features. Just maintaining Nextcloud, like updating libraries and supporting new technologies, actually takes most of our time. We showed last year that about 95% of the changes were maintenance related, not adding things. Now we did a big rewrite and many features, but once again, some 96% of the updates are keeping Nextcloud well maintained. Work doesn't happen in one place anymore. Whether you're working from home, in the office, or from a nearby coffee shop, you need access to your files at any time. And you need to collaborate on them with others in real time. Files are the backbone of collaboration, but file handling has become more demanding. Over the years, we added new capabilities and functionality. Security also became a lot more important. Nextcloud Files take on these challenges while keeping you in control. It combines cloud storage and file sharing with collaboration features, while ensuring that data stays with the organization and it's not exposed to third parties. Now I'm excited to see what's new in Files. Let's go back to Simon.
So when you are busy, security has to be default, not manual work. Greta and Derek covered some security improvements, but left a big topic for me: encryption. Nextcloud offers a few different encryption layers. Whenever data is transferred between users and the Nextcloud server, it is protected using standard TLS encryption, the same technology that keeps most web traffic secure. Nextcloud is connected to an object storage like Amazon S3 or any other external storage. Data on that storage can also be protected using server-side encryption. Server-side encryption can be used not only with external storage, but also with local storage on the Nextcloud server. In this setup, the encryption keys are only held in the server's memory while the user is logged in. We store the keys encrypted on disk when not in use. For very sensitive data, Nextcloud offers end-to-end encryption on a per-folder basis. This means files are encrypted directly on the user's device, so even an administrator could not get at the data. The server only helps with the key exchange for syncing and sharing, but it has zero knowledge. It never sees the data or the encryption keys in readable form. In the previous release, we brought a limited web interface to end-to-end encryption. In Hub 26 Winter, this has been extended further. End-to-end encryption can now be set up directly in the browser. Permissions on files can be managed, encrypted file drops are supported, and public links can be created for end-to-end encrypted data. Everything now possible in the browser. Let's see what this looks like. First, you will have to enable the web interface for end-to-end encryption in the user settings. Then, create a new encrypted folder and store the passphrase somewhere safe. Mind the warning: losing the passphrase means losing access to the data. Now you can upload a file and share it with team members or even with a public link. That's how easy it is. You will need that passphrase next time you navigate to your encrypted folder. As you can see, you can then browse through the stored files and folders. You can even view and edit them. Of course, keep in mind that browsers are inherently less secure than working from the desktop, but you have the choice. Speaking of choice, end-to-end encryption is a tool for specific use cases. For example, in large organizations where compliance is important, it makes no sense to encrypt all data end-to-end, as the server would not have access for auditing purposes. Server-side encryption is a better option in that case, giving additional protection while keeping the organization in control. Without security, you are not in control over your data. But as Frank said, there's something else that is key for having control over your data. You should be able to choose where you host it. With the big tech solutions, you don't have that choice. With Nextcloud, you do. And we make this even easier with Nextcloud Hub 26 Winter. You might know the user migration app. This is very helpful if you want to move your data from one Nextcloud server to another. Say, you are a student and when your studies are finished, you want to move your data from the university's Nextcloud to a private instance. Easy. Go to your user settings, just select what you want to export. Then you take the data to a new instance and import it there. With this release, we have extended the apps it supports. You can now also migrate mail, contacts, and calendars, as well as your deck, boards, and your tables. We also added the user migration app to the quick configuration presets where it makes sense. This makes sure it is enabled on private, university, and service provider instances. Now, after you left the university, maybe you still want to share with students still there or your professors. Or employees from the Ministry of Finance, for example, would like to share documents with the Ministry of Education. Teach them about finance, perhaps, or learn something. Whatever your motivation, sharing across servers is called federation. And as Frank said, we made improvements there too. The term federation might sound complicated, but it is not. Think how easy it is to share a file from Dropbox to Google Drive, or send a message from Apple's Messenger to WhatsApp. Join a Slack chat room for Microsoft Teams. Yeah, that's not going to happen. These companies lock you in to their platform. But you can send an email to anyone, Gmail, Hotmail, or company mail, for example. And you can also call anyone, no matter what provider they have. This is federation. It gives you choice rather than locking you in. With Nextcloud, if you want to work with somebody else, you can send them a public link or create a guest account. But if they also use Nextcloud, even if they are at a different company, you can share directly with them. This also works in Talk. Just enter the federation ID that is like the email address of the other person, and they are added to the room. With Nextcloud Hub 26 Winter, you can now add federated users to Nextcloud Teams. After that, you can invite the team to talk rooms or share deck boards or files with them anywhere in Nextcloud. New is also that you can do that directly from the Teams interface. That makes it a bit faster to set up a new team with the resources they need. I mentioned Deck specifically because with this release, Deck introduces support for federation. You can now easily collaborate on projects with people from other organizations. The same goes for calendars. We made it possible to share those read-only with somebody on a different server in the previous Hub release. With this release, you can share them with full write permissions if you like. And did you know Nextcloud Office already had support for federation? You could work together on a document with people from multiple universities, for example. With this release, we also added federated file locking. That means that if you're working on a document on your desktop, the sync client will lock the file on your server. If you then shared the file to somebody on a different Nextcloud server, the lock is shared. When they try to open that same file, they will get a warning that you are working on the document. So with federation, you're not locked into your server. You can host wherever you want and still collaborate with others. With this release, we put you in control. We install the user migration app on system by default and make it possible to migrate data from deck, calendar, mail, contacts, and tables. And federation levels up. You can now add people from a different organization to a team and share deck boards across servers. Even file locking works in a federated way now. You should be in control over your photos, your documents, your chats, and video calls. No snooping, no surveillance capitalism. That is a fundamental belief that we in the Nextcloud community share. Now let's move on. Jos already talked about the work we did to bring the new ADA engine to Nextcloud. The ADA engine and the scalability improvements it brings will be critical for the future of Nextcloud. Together, these changes make Nextcloud files more responsive, more scalable, and easier to use in situations where file-based collaboration carries the most weight. Nextcloud Hub also has desktop file sync applications for Windows, Mac, and Linux, as well as mobile apps on Android and iOS. Let me highlight some desktop client improvements. First, we enabled Nextcloud Assistant to be able to use it with your local files. We also worked on design and introduced a new version numbering. Now, the client version is aligned with server versions, meaning that our latest client is version 33. On macOS, there were two versions of our app, one with the old selective sync approach and one with the virtual file system, which shows all files but only downloads them when you use them. We merged these into a single app that offers both options. The VFS on Windows was improved too. Like the macOS client, the setup is now pretty much instant, and no matter how much data you have on your server. New are dynamic context menus. This adds actions to files based on the apps running on your Nextcloud server. For example, archive a file or folder on the server, create a transcript of an audio file with Nextcloud Assistant, convert files with Pandoc, and import a file with contact data to the default address book. Of course, we didn't only bring this to the desktop client. We also brought these dynamic manual entries to our mobile clients, so you can access these functions anywhere. Apps can add more of these file actions, and we look forward to see what our app developers come up with. And we have lots of other updates in both iOS and Android clients, including work on UX and performance of these apps. We made search better, improved the automatic upload of photos, and as mentioned before, it is now easier to sign in with a QR code. Now, let's move on to the next speaker.
I am asked from time to time about my favorite Nextcloud app. And for me, the answer is clear, the Nextcloud Talk. And that is because Nextcloud Talk, it's where everything comes together in our hybrid work setup, like a virtual town hall, where you meet your colleagues, you start your workday and connect. Talk brings chat, audio, and video calls together. Conversations happen next to the files and projects they belong to, reducing friction and keeping communication connected to work itself. This briefing here can be discussed directly in the chat without leaving the platform. And here in our group chat, a call can start directly from the context of a project. Communication can extend across organizational boundaries, while each side keeps control over its own environment. If you have a joint project with an agency, business partner, or other stakeholders, for example, you have three options. If they don't run their own Nextcloud, you can create guest accounts or use a public room that is accessible to anyone with a link. If they are also Nextcloud users, you can add them instead of creating an account. They will see the chat and be able to participate from their existing web interface. See here, for example, how easily Christine can add Berna to the group chat for our launch video, and they can share with each other the behind-the-scene material that we're recording today. Now let's get a little bit more in depth. My colleague Camila here, a fellow engineer, will tell us more about Nextcloud Talk. So Camila, what's new in Nextcloud Talk?
Yes, Greta, I have a few great updates. Let's begin with chat. You can now split the message bubbles to your right, just like in some other chat applications. We got the feedback that this is much more intuitive and gives the user a better overview of their own messages.
I see you can also pin messages now on Nextcloud Talk, right?
Yes. This is great for announcements, so they can be kept on top of everything else. Just like links, files, you can pin it in the chat room. Of course, we still have our chat room description, so the general information is still visible and available there. What I really appreciate is that you can now schedule messages.
Yeah, in a hybrid work setup, that can be super important, right?
Yes, correct. Some colleagues get up very early and they start sending messages at 6 in the morning. But let's be honest, nobody wants to be pinged at this time of the morning, right? And so if you are an early bird, you can schedule messages when it is convenient for the night owls of your team.
Ooh. As a night owl, I can absolutely relate.
Okay, Derek. Let's move on with the calls. What's new when it comes to video conferencing?
Changes here are subtle, but very cool. You can now configure some audio options for auto gain and echo suppression and noise cancellation. And if you're a fan of the background blur and quiet laptops, which is very important, you appreciate that community member kick off some of the work to have the background detection to run on the GPU instead of the CPU, which is more energy efficient and more precise. It's a win-win.
I really like that, actually. Sometimes I like a change of scenery and work from my favorite coffee shop or in the summer from the park. So noise suppression is very important to me. Thank you so much, Camila.
Now, let's go over some of my favorite apps. The Nextcloud Groupware apps. We have plenty of updates from Nextcloud Mail and Calendar, especially Mail. I want to hand things over to Camila to tell us more about these updates. Camila, would you please tell us what is new in Groupware?
Yes, Derek. Nextcloud Groupware is what keeps everyday work running. It connects calendars, shared contacts, and tasks with files and communication, instead of scattering it across disconnected tools. Take Nextcloud Mail. It's a modern, easy-to-use mail client. It keeps all your email accounts in one place. For this release, we focus on improvements to make your daily work easier and more efficient. So now let me show you 5 improvements that save you time by using the Mail app. First, when you open a mailbox, attachments are immediately visible in the threads. So no need to scroll through all the messages to find the documents. Second, if you get a meeting invitation in an email, you will find it in the calendar already. You can just go there in the calendar, accept or send out an invitation. Third, you can now favor a thread. And by doing so, the thread will stay pinned to the top of your inbox. So if you have an important conversation you absolutely do not want to miss, you should favor it. So you'll be very easy to find and won't get lost in your new emails. Fourth, you can turn off message previews. They'll make it easier for you to browse through more emails at once. Fifth and last, the new quick filters on top of your mailbox will help you find relevant emails with less clicks. For instance, unread emails, emails with attachments, and emails addressed to you. The team also improved the advanced filters, making them easier to select and apply. Last time, we've done a lot of work in the calendar, especially when it comes to finding a time for meetings. This time around, we are focusing on polishing those features, but we also worked on import and export, as well as federated calendars. One other interesting improvement is a setting that can restrict external invites to protect you from security threats. When the restriction is enabled, people will only be able to invite other Nextcloud users. So that was Groupware. A ton of work in Mail and a smaller number of changes to Calendar. We would love to hear what you think of the work we did.
Thank you, Camila. That's a lot of improvements in Nextcloud Mail.
There are more, in fact. It's a long list. If you want to check the summary, you can pause the video now.
I personally like all the ways you can filter mail now. Quick or advanced, there is something for everyone. Thanks again, Camila. Next up, I'd like to invite Michael from Collabora to share all things Nextcloud Office, which we developed together with his team. Michael, what's new for documents, spreadsheets, and presentations?
Nextcloud Office is a collaborative online office suite based on Collabora Online. Fully interoperable with all sorts of document formats and presentation formats and accessible inside your browser, any modern browser. Nextcloud and Collabora have a model partnership built on a shared mission around open source. We've been working hand in hand now since 2016. Our developers, sales, pre-sales, and teams just constantly interacting together, getting ideas, and improving the product. And this has brought us together hundreds of joint customers, major public and private projects. And as always, I'm excited to be here to talk about the latest features in Nextcloud Hub Winter 26. We have a whole load of things to talk about. To me, it feels like so much has happened. I can only give you a small taste of just a few of the things around design and usability improvements. So let's get into that. So commenting. I do a whole load of commenting as I interact with documents with people every day. And we've just added these polished design elements there to make that just easier and quicker. Editing comments, reviewing them, resolving them. And yeah, you can definitely feel the difference from all of that. Other little things, I mean, just an example here, this editing and viewing mode, just making it clearer. Whether you're in a read-only document or not, and easy to switch and change that as you move along. Just these little details, but they're everywhere. What about file settings? So options. We've always had these options, but they've been less easy to find, so bring them closer. Configuring auto text view settings, interface properties, and just making them easy to find right there in the Nextcloud Office UI from the File tab. So, comparing documents. It's sometimes difficult to understand how that works. So we have very powerful change tracking, or redlining, as it's often called. And the users sometimes have problems with that. Some users say, well, how can I get rid of the red color and the strike through? You know, they don't understand how it's a change that's been deleted. So now we've added this new way whereby you can compare documents and you can see them side to side. So you just get this wonderful view of before and after, and it's just very intuitive, very easy to use. With all of those things highlighted so you don't miss a symbol. I mean, I know change tracking well, but even so, getting the order right, you know, which one is compared, which is the old and new. All of that stuff is being cleaned up and made beautifully easy to use. And of course, you can then do that from the UI. Of course, change tracking is still there in its existing form as a very powerful feature. You can now compare documents. So you can pick a document in Nextcloud you want to compare with, and you can do that comparison, and then you can see, you know, a view of those changes. You can even filter those by date and time and person, all sorts of powerful functionality there. We haven't taken anything away. We're just adding more usability. We've also greatly improved accessibility on mobile devices in a couple of ways, and let me just look at those. So if you have a limited screen height, it's really, really helpful now to collapse some of those toolbars and get things out of the way so that then you can see more as you're editing. We've also done a whole load of work on mobile editing and reading experience for screen readers. So now when accessibility is enabled in the Nextcloud Office admin settings, the iOS voiceover can now read the file content out as well. So you can actually have your document read to you. So that's really helpful, in addition to navigating through that, titles and controls and content there.
Your company name or logo. Bullet. Your Payne Bullet Street name 120. Company letter template docs.
Now let's talk about updates and spreadsheets. So by popular request from actually several of our joint customers, we introduced support for sheet views. Now sheet views let multiple people see the same data set filtered in different ways. So you can just click this and create your own view and your own filtering and sorting and subset of that data. So for example, if you have a big list of customer accounts assigned to different people, each one can have their own view to work on. So your sales team can work productively on those pieces and edit and update things separately. So at the moment, you can apply that sheet view, get the filters and so on. In the future, we'll be loading and saving that and interoperating with that, but the core feature is there in this version of Nextcloud Hub. Of course, we keep working on interoperability. Here, we've got this new table design feature and a tab that allows you to adjust the style of your slides and how it looks using all those familiar table design features and interoperate with XLSX files there. And lots of nice style presets you can use quickly. We've also invested there's so much on interoperability, it's hard to just go into detail on it. But here's one metric we're using. It's a kind of a burn down, a graph that goes down to the right, and just fixing a whole load of our worst bug documents so that they don't cause any issue when we import them into Microsoft Office. Fantastic work from the team there. Once that's at 0, it stays at 0. We have great automated testing to keep it there. Big improvements in interoperability. The presentation editor now lets you run slideshows even without a big screen or projector between your friends. So you can get everybody into the document and then you can lead a slideshow or a presentation with this present to all feature. And so you can start it for everyone else and you can let them then follow you through the slides, seeing what's coming up. But you can also go backwards and you can then, perhaps if you've taken a while, you wanted to see that slide or you hadn't quite finished reading it, some people talk too fast and move too fast, then you can actually catch up on that. And even better than that, for those who are impaired, there's accessibility support there. So if you find it particularly challenging to read a slide or catch up perhaps on a screen reader, then you have the time to do that. You don't need to be hurried ahead. So a major new feature there. There's so much more in the release that I'd love to share with you, but try it out for yourself. And it gives me great pleasure to hand back to Jos.
Thank you, Michael. So I especially love that last feature. It means you can just share a presentation in a talk room, for example, and then everybody can open the presentation themselves, follow you while you give the presentation. But for example, if they missed a slide or want to look at it closer, they can still go back and look at that slide. Of course, it also works better when you're on a bad network connection and you don't need to stream the video and then watch the choppy animations. You just follow it in your local copy and you get like smooth animations, etc. So that's a lot nicer, I think. So that's of course not all of Nextcloud Office. There is more than just the Office applications that Michael Meeks talked about just now. We also have a few important updates in other Office applications. So for example, in Nextcloud Hub, we have the whiteboard. Now you can use the whiteboard for brainstorming, online classroom, training, presentations, etc. And it's of course very useful in Nextcloud Talk meetings, but also outside for your own brainstorming. Now we added a lot of improvements for these brainstorming sessions. For example, there's now timers that allow you to work with a group and keep on schedule. You can give everybody a few minutes to brainstorm, You then create a timer, move it around. You can even add and subtract time while it is running. If you say, okay, let's give everybody 1 more minute to work on this, just click add it to the timer. So it's super easy. Another nice feature is voting. So you can conduct a little poll to make a team decision. You can then render the result for everyone even on the whiteboard. So then for the next time, you can, look and say, hey, we have the results here from last time. Let's create a new poll, add the options and add it to the whiteboard again. And you can then keep over time, see the changing opinions of the team, for example. Next, we added the ability to add comments. So on any item, you can basically add a comment and say, okay, this is too big, too small, we need to change this, and so share your opinions there and have a focused discussion. New is also support for emojis. You can use them maybe to respond to ideas, but yeah, you just drop in an emoji, and I personally really see a lot of creative potential there. Then there's a table component. It allows you to create and insert tables in your whiteboard so you can structure information easily without the need to link to outside sources or insert a file. Of course, you can still insert a file if you want, but this can be a little bit more direct. Now, the final improvement I think is also really nice. Whiteboard has improved its support for versions. So you can have version history, you can compare two versions if you want, you can name the versions so that an older version stays around. And this way, if you had a brainstorm, later other changes were made, you can always go back to an earlier version and compare between the two. So I think this really also helps you, stay in control over that and not lose something important maybe because somebody else has been working on the document. Now let me throw in a summary here, as there are so many improvements for Nextcloud Whiteboard in this release, it almost makes my head spin. I think it's really an impressive update, and I didn't even mention they also did a lot of performance work and some user interface improvements. So overall, I think the Nextcloud Whiteboard is really leveling up in this release. Now, talking of leveling up, let's talk a little bit about Nextcloud Text. So this is a collaborative text editor that really lets you focus on the content rather than what page it is or what font to use. And with this release, Nextcloud Text becomes more robust when you have network failures. So, if you're flexible and travel a lot or working from a cafe, sometimes you're dealing with unstable connections. And with Hub 26 Winter, Nextcloud Text, as well as our knowledge-based collectives, make editing more robust when there's a bad network. So even if the network fails for a little bit, you can continue editing. The changes will be saved locally, and when you connect back to the network, they will insert it back into the document, even if you're working with other people. Now, the second feature I want to mention is the second most upvoted feature actually on GitHub for Nextcloud Text. Of course, Nextcloud Text is a Markdown editor. It stays to the Markdown, although it has a surprisingly rich feature set. It allows you to insert all kinds of things. And if you work in science, you will really appreciate, I think, this change, because we're introducing support for LaTeX. That's a powerful typesetting language and allows you to insert formulas and equations into Nextcloud Text using the LaTeX language, and they will then be nicely formatted by Nextcloud Text. And this also works, of course, in collectives, as well as in Nextcloud Text, because those are all places where Nextcloud Text is used to edit documents. So I just said that everywhere where Nextcloud Text is used, you benefit from these improvements. There's one more place where Nextcloud Text is used, and that's Nextcloud Notes. So our very nice, easy to use, Markdown-based note-taking app. And this is also available on mobile as well as on desktop. And with this release, we have a nice usability improvement that was contributed by a community member. It allows you to drag and drop notes between the categories. This is really making it easier, of course, to create categories, to add notes to it, and to just structure your notes. There have also been some improvements to the mobile Notes app. So once again, we're looking forward to hear what you think of the Nextcloud Notes app and, help us, join us in improving the app further. Finally, I have some news for the almost 100,000 administrators that are running Nextcloud in the all-in-one Docker image. I've talked about it before, Nextcloud Text is very flexible. It's designed not to lock you into a single solution or one way of working. You can take a different Photos app or a different chat app. There are lots of choices in the Nextcloud ecosystem. And Office suites are also an option here. There are multiple Office solutions. Of course, you can pick the default, Nextcloud Office, but with this release, we also make it possible to pick other solutions directly from the all-in-one Docker container. So choosing and switching is easier this way, and that gives you an option to compare your choices and let the people who are on your Nextcloud server try out and see what they like best. Back to you, Greta.
Now let's talk about AI in Nextcloud. First, let us have a brief overview of AI tools to understand what, why, and how it works.
For most organizations, the question is no longer whether AI is used, but under which conditions. Using AI usually means sending data to external services, data that is then used as training for AI models. For organizations working with sensitive data, this quickly becomes a problem, legally, technically, and ethically.
If you don't provide internal AI you can trust, people will likely start using their favorite services like ChatGPT for work. And that means losing control of your sensitive data.
AI in Nextcloud is designed to be sovereign. Organizations decide where AI runs, which models are used, and what happens to their data. Sovereign AI means AI that fits into compliance, existing governance, and data protection requirements. Sovereign AI allows organizations to benefit from AI-supported collaboration without giving up responsibility for their data, and it also allows them to stay in control.
And as always in Nextcloud, AI is optional and configurable, not a mandatory layer imposed on all users or workflows. This allows organizations to adopt AI at their own pace, align it with internal policies, and decide which use case makes sense in their environment. So, we made sure it's always clear when you're using AI features through design and explicit notes. While designing AI integrations, our team was conscious about risks and downsides. We integrated AI where it made sense, not wherever we could. We also offer dedicated interfaces for things like searching files or creating images rather than integrating into a single chatbot. These single chats interfaces can be convenient, but also there is a risk of trusting them too much and believing they are all powerful beings instead of just tools. When AI is enabled in Nextcloud, it becomes part of the collaboration environment instead of external dependency. It integrates into existing workflows without breaking governance or compliance frameworks. But now, Derek, let's go to the features.
Nextcloud Assistant can perform various tasks like improving and generating text, generating media, answering questions about your data, or creating documents based on your input.
Nextcloud Assistant works as a standalone app, and it is also integrated in various apps, for example, email, chats, and file systems through Assistant features.
Nextcloud Talk can summarize calls and conversations. We've recently introduced live transcription, and now it works with translation, helping teams break through language barriers that might keep them from efficiently collaborating.
We agree that we need to be transparent about AI-generated content, not only for internal use, but also when it comes to content for external use.
There are more regulations being introduced, like the AI Act in the EU. One of the new rules is AI content labeling. Nextcloud Assistant makes compliance easier. You can generate images and documents in various apps and label AI content with watermarks automatically. This ensures AI law compliance with little work. Also, Nextcloud Assistant has better memory. It can now remember what you talk about across all your chats, so you don't need to give it a briefing again to come back to topic. This is configurable, fully under the user's control. Add or remove whatever you want.
Well, there are many other improvements. We improved scaling of Nextcloud Assistant, context chat, integrated new models, and improved features for various popular models.
Before moving on to the Nextcloud ecosystem, let's talk about Nextcloud Flow, our bundle of automation tools.
Ongoing digitalization brings more pressure to many organizations. More service need to be provided, which means more workload and even more complex processes. For some, limited budget becomes a bottleneck and creates a shortage of qualified staff.
This is a big pain in public administration, even in well-digitalized countries. Applications need to be processed, documents reviewed, deadlines met, and not just efficiently, but also while being compliant. as it involves highly sensitive citizen data and complex regulations.
Nextcloud addresses this challenge with Nextcloud Flow, a set of workflow automation tools. Automation reduces errors, saves times, and helps teams cope with limited resources. Flow has several components.
There is an app for automatically tagging files based on various conditions, including the content of the files. And then actions can be configured in the Flow interface as you see here. For example, when a document is uploaded in a specific folder, you could get notified, send a chat message, or trigger a script.
The approval app can be used to create little workflows based on, the name is suggestive. You can track and request approvals on, for example, a document. We added a small but useful feature. It is now possible to add an explanation note when rejecting a file.
Hooray for transparency.
A more advanced level of automation is possible with Windmill, a powerful business workflow engine provided by our partner Windmill Labs.
Processes are built by connecting pieces of Nextcloud or external applications. For example, you can build a flow that responds to an incoming email. Then it moves its attachment into a folder and alerts people in a chat room. The flow could also perform automatic actions with your tag files, or streamline external payments with a mass of people on the other end of your website.
Stay tuned, there will be a related announcement in the coming months. Another component of Nextcloud Flow is Nextcloud Tables. It is an app for structuring data and creating no-code custom apps to record and manage any data you need.
With this release, Nextcloud Tables gives you more ways to work with your data.
For example, we introduce advanced date filters to manage the views of complex tables with dates.
Imagine you maintain a large set of records with names and dates. Thousands of entries. Sometimes you need to filter the entries quickly.
For instance, a huge project with hundreds of tasks and deadlines. Tables now lets you quickly filter such a list by deadline and even create automated views with tasks that are due soon.
Now, you can also share views using public links, allowing your collaborators to browse data in Nextcloud.
We're coming to a very important part, the Nextcloud Platform. Nextcloud bigger than just a hub. Jos will let you know more about that.
Thanks, Greta. So, let's talk about the Nextcloud ecosystem. Of course, many organizations are not rolling out new applications in isolation. It has to fit an existing IT landscape that has been developed over years and contains all kinds of processes and other application and infrastructure components. Now think about identity management, document management, specialized applications for your sector. They all need to work together. And Nextcloud is designed as a platform exactly for this kind of environment. It's designed to be extended, integrated and adapted rather than forcing you to adapt to Nextcloud. Now for developers, this means we need to offer stable APIs, a clean app framework and predictable interface. And that's of course exactly what Nextcloud does. So custom integrations can connect to Nextcloud, connecting them to existing systems, automate processes, or add domain-specific functionality. And everything has been built in a high-performance, natively integrated way. So you can build apps for Nextcloud, adding to the hundreds of existing apps and integrations in the App Store, or of course build external apps and talk to the Nextcloud APIs to be integrated in our ecosystem. And for this, at your service is the Open Collaboration Services API. It's a fully documented API using the Open API standard. We provide a long stability window, so apps will keep working as Nextcloud evolves, and external APIs will keep allowing your applications to communicate with Nextcloud as the platform evolves. Now, exploring the API is super simple with the OCS viewer. You can look for a function you want to execute, you can test it out, and you can grab the code to implement it in your app, easy as pie. With Nextcloud Hub 26 Winter, we've updated some of our APIs. On the front end, the Files API package is using an expanded context object with the current folder and file list, and action handlers are using destructured parameters instead of positional arguments. We've also replaced the legacy OCA.files interface. Now, I don't understand what any of that means, but the developers have really promised me that I'm not talking nonsense here and making everybody laugh at me. So let's continue and you judge how it goes. Now the sidebar comes with a new web component-based API from Nextcloud Files, and the profile app has been migrated to Vue 3 with a new framework-agnostic API using custom web components. So external apps can actually still use Vue 2-based sections if needed in the sidebar. On the backend, we worked on the new mount point API and Snowflake ID support, as I already mentioned earlier when I was introducing the ADA engine. These are changes that make Nextcloud more scalable and more performance, especially given the integrated nature of the platform that we are building. Now, this also means we've updated APIs related to the database, so our applications can take advantage of all the improvements that the ADA engine brings. To keep your applications compatible with the new versions of Nextcloud, please read the updates in our documentation. We've put a QR code on screen so you can use that to find the documentation or go to nextcloud.com/developer. Now, there you can then check all the mistakes I've made because again, this level of technical detail is well beyond my understanding. Now, speaking of APIs, one last thing. For this release, we added Open Metrics endpoint. So that makes it possible for applications in Nextcloud to expose information that can then be collected via the endpoint, for example, by monitoring tools like Prometheus, and then be displayed in a tool like Grafana. Now I want to look at a couple of examples of popular applications that were developed by the community and that are available for Nextcloud. So a lot of organizations are using Nextcloud internally, and of course they have an internal support system for their employees. Now, an app for comprehensive integration of the ITOP ticketing system allows you now to seamlessly connect to the Nextcloud collaboration platform, so the ITOP IT service management system can expose information there. So that brings that functionality directly in the daily workflow of your users. They can add tickets, they can even search for them in the unified search. You can even address tickets with the smart picker, so you can insert a link to a ticket very easily, for example, in Nextcloud Talk or in the deck card. So you can track work on the tickets. It's really integrated in Nextcloud this way. And I think that will really help organizations that use that ticketing system. By the way, we already have a similar integration with Zamat, which is another ticketing system. And of course, well, if you want another ticketing system to be integrated, you can either look at this code or work with us to get a similar level of integration. Now, another app I want to highlight is the attendance app. So this allows you to track attendance for events in Nextcloud using features like real-time event check-in reminders and even a nice dashboard widget to stay on top of the upcoming events and how well they are doing. We're happy to see that our community is so active. They're contributing to existing applications or uploading really cool new apps to our App Store. And of course, as always, you are also invited to contribute. For example, we already mentioned the declarative UI in the desktop app as well as the mobile apps. To enable these new dynamic actions on files, you can build a server app that adds another action on a file. For example, we now have a transcription of an audio file to text. Maybe you can create a text-to-speech app that allows a user on the mobile phone or on the desktop to turn a document into an audio file. So we really want to call on our community to enable these kind of actions for other apps so that people who use Nextcloud Hub have even more options at their disposal. So please go read our API on how to work with these capabilities and make something awesome. Now, there is another class of integrations. I already talked about it, external applications that can talk to Nextcloud. And that helps integrating in your existing environment. For example, Microsoft integrations are a good example here. And we have an add-on by Sendent, so you can securely share large files directly in Outlook while you keep the data on your Nextcloud server. And you can also use it to invite people very easily from Outlook to a talk meeting, for example, so they can join the talk meeting via the browser. The room is created, everything is set up. Now, Sendent is extending these capabilities also to Mac users. So they have developed Sendent for Apple Mail on the desktop that also offers this secure large file transfer, configurable expiration dates, passwords, as well as the talk integration. And it can now be downloaded for free in the Apple App Store. So if you want to get started, either building new integrations like this or using existing integrations, right? You can find all these apps on apps.nextcloud.com. You can also download an app there to get started with that as a developer, to build on it, add more improvements, or turn it into a new app for yourself. Go to our developer page, scan the QR code, and get started. Make a difference to the Nextcloud platform. Great, Derek, back to you.
Thanks, Jos. Let's summarize everything we talked about.
With Nextcloud, your organization can grow over time, and as developer, you can help bring digital sovereignty to millions of users in our community.
Nextcloud Hub 26 Winter has many updates, giving you even more control, ownership, and stronger security. A more powerful Nextcloud Hub that is even easier to use. What do you think, Greta?
What I like the most in this release are some of the practical improvements that impact me every day, like pinned messages in Nextcloud Talk compact mode in mail, and I think the live translation in calls, it's really an impressive feature.
We talked about a lot of highly technical things today.
Right, but you don't need to know all of that to get started with Nextcloud and regain control. Home users, company or big government, and even without deep technical skills.
It is very important to us to provide ways in which everyone can take their first steps into the world of digital sovereignty. And you might be wondering where to start. Where do we start?
Broadly, I would say you can go one of the two ways. First, there's a private cloud. And second, you can go for a managed service.
You can use Nextcloud to shape your own collaboration platform running in a cloud. Private means it's dedicated to you, but there are still options here. First, virtual. A cloud provider configured a virtual cloud for you on which Nextcloud runs. You manage Nextcloud, but it is running on a shared hardware. Second, hosted. Your hardware is fully dedicated to you. However, you're still in somebody else's data center and not for you. Then the third option might be for you. Third, on-premises. Run Nextcloud on-premises in your own data center. Or like yours, you can run it in your old desktop turned server in the living room.
If you use a private cloud, you have to take care of maintaining Nextcloud yourself. We make that as easy as possible, both for home and business users. For smaller installations, we have our all-in-one. It's a cloud-ready Docker container, deploy it, and it takes care of the rest. It will manage a number of other containers, making sure that they get updated, handling backups, and so on. Get started with the all-in-one Docker image by scanning this QR code or visit our download page. It's super easy and convenient. Of course, there are other options like a snap for Ubuntu systems, for example. For large-scale installations, we have what we call our enterprise all-in-one. That is a cloud-native solution designed for Kubernetes, clusters, and such. If you think that all that sounds like a lot of work, you are looking for a managed Nextcloud.
With managed Nextcloud, there are some choices to make, but we're here to help. First, as a business, you might want a private cloud, virtual, hosted, or even in your own data center. But you'd like to get help with deployment and maintenance. This is possible. We have some excellent partners that will keep your systems running smoothly wherever you host it. Second, you could get an all-in-one service with hosting management. We have hosting partners which offer this for businesses and home users. Third, simple sign-up. It is the quickest way to get started for home users. All you need to do is go to nextcloud.com/signup and just enter your email address to get started. You will get a free account at one of our hosting partners chosen based on your location. Let me assure you that you will not be the first one to go on this journey. Thousands of organizations like yours have already successfully moved to Nextcloud.
And at that, I'm giving the stage back to Jos.
Now, to close, I want to talk one more time to all of you watching. First of all, of course, to thank you for watching and spending time with us, learning about everything that we've been working on for Nextcloud in our whole community. Because you, even by watching, and especially, of course, by using Nextcloud, you're part of something bigger than any single person or single entity. I've already mentioned this a few times. Nextcloud isn't owned by anyone. It's owned by everyone in our community. It's a shared ownership here. And over the years, thousands have contributed as individuals, as employees, maybe at a customer, or employees at a partner that directly works with the wider community on Nextcloud, or companies that are building apps or integrations or just adding bug fixes and little improvements. And our community is always working tirelessly so that everyone can build and improve and benefit from Nextcloud, creating their own secure sovereign digital workplace. Now, and this is of course what makes us special and different from big tech. We're a community. I'm really a strong believer in the rule that smart people don't all work for you. There are more smart people that don't work for your company, even if you're a Google or a Microsoft, even the big companies. Most smart people don't work for them. And that's why community is so powerful. It means that all these smart people can contribute and make a difference without all having to work for one single entity. So for our users at home or in organizations, it means you're not reliant on any single entity. Our community is bigger than all of us. And you benefit from the collective wisdom and knowledge of the entire open source community, everybody who helps Nextcloud. That is what it means to be standing on the shoulders of giants. We're building on an incredible base of knowledge from the wider open source community. So that's why I really want to thank each and every one of you who has made a contribution to Nextcloud in any way for this release, and of course any previous release. Thanks to you, we get bug reports, we get new ideas, we get, of course, code contributions, any kind of change and improvement, even translations or helping answer questions on forums. This really makes a huge difference for us. And it's also incredibly motivating for the other people in the community, right? Because together we are making something that really has a big impact in the world. So to continue to fuel the skyrocketing success of Nextcloud and the whole open source movement is all because of you. So I really want to celebrate this release together with all of you. And thank you for contributing, listening, and making a difference. Have a nice day.